March 21st, 1994, Craig, you were still playing back then. You were traded on deadline day. Do you remember for who? And obviously we know to who, but do you remember who the guy coming back was?
He was an integral part of our team for many years when I came back as coach, and another astute move by then General Manager Glenn Sather to trade an aging, declining veteran for a young up-and-comer like Todd Marchand.
But you were still key piece for the Rangers winning the Stanley Cup that year.
I don't know about key, but thanks.
You took that draw at the end. We all remember that. Okay, yeah. Craig, right. Deadline day 2015. Let's jump ahead 21 years here. You trade Jeff Petrie to the Montreal Canadiens for a second rounder, a conditional fifth. How tough was it to get a deal done, and how did that kind of progress and finally get executed?
Well, it was we were involved in many discussions over the last couple of weeks, so it was more difficult than what I thought it was going to be to conclude a deal. We were chasing something that might have made a little bit more sense for us last night, but it didn't materialize into the evening hours last night, and I was able to circle back to Montreal and conclude a deal. But it was it was, again, most of these deals, if not all of these deals, are the byproduct of countless conversations that you have with a number of teams, including Montreal.
Jeff played a lot of heavy minutes. He played hard. He played well the last little while. Now there's a bit of a hole on the back end. Who does that open the door for, in the last 19 games here, maybe?
Well, I think for us, we want to continue to see Jordan Osterley, who's come in and played very well in the few games that Jeff's missed over the last 10 days or so. I think Brandon Davidson's another guy that we'd like to get up here and have a good look to, a good look with, and give him a good opportunity to have a look to see what the capability level of these young players is going into next year.
How about was there much else happening, or was it the focus just on Jeff and finding the right deal there, or did you get a lot of inquiries about other guys maybe?
No, I'd say my conversations were 95% revolving around Jeff and trying to find a good opportunity for Jeff, and at the same time a good rate of return for the Edmonton Oilers. But as I said 10 days or so ago, that I anticipated much less activity this year than last year when I was at this point. But I think that's a positive. We're seeing some signs of a good, stable foundation that we can build on. There's not going to be the tumultuous turnover going into next year, and people would say, well, you're in 29th place right now. There's got to be some change, and there will be some modest change, but I'm reasonably happy with what I've seen. We've got some obvious weaknesses that we're going to have to address, but now wasn't the time to address those.
Well, how tough would it have been to pry out a prospect or another body coming back the other way?
Well, it was impossible, and I mean, that was really the type of deal that we set out to do from the outset, and that was to secure a draft choice and a prospect, and we'd rather have the prospect, really, somebody that's a little bit further along, but we also realize that this is a very good draft. Our guys say it's an excellent draft. We're loaded with draft choices, with 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, 2 third-round picks. So it's really going to afford us the opportunity not only to draft good players, but be able to, at the same time, use those draft choices potentially to fill obvious holes that we have on our hockey team.
Having said that, how crazy could it be in Sunrise at the end of June for the Oilers and yourself and Scott in particular?
Well, it's going to be an exciting time for us. It's Scott Housen's favorite time of year, the draft, and I can echo those statements too, because it's a time when you're really building your team and you're really adding to your team, and it's an exciting time for everybody, the young players and our organization as well, and that's going to be compounded and made more exciting this year because of the fact that we have so many opportunities in a deep draft to really help ourselves.
Okay, with 5 or so weeks remaining in the season, just what are you looking for from your club? Obviously, there's been better results in the win column, but what are you going to be watching for with the next 19 games here?
I think we've got a nucleus of guys, and we've got a core group of players that are fairly obvious, and I want to continue to be part of a development process with this team that is going to add to that core group and give that core group more horsepower around them. And I think I really do see the tide changing around here. There's light at the end of the tunnel, and the only thing that I'm guarded about when saying that is because we've been here before and the fans have heard that before.
Right.
But I think when you go to the games and we play good teams and we're in the games and the games are highly competitive, we've closed a considerable gap over the last year to where we are now. And with all these draft choices going forward, with Darnell Nurse going to be a key player in all of that, with Leon Draisaitl, developing the right way, coming into our organization. There are good times ahead for the Edmonton Oilers, and it does take time, but to do it right, I think it's worth it. And I think we're on the horizon of really another great decade of Oiler hockey.
All right. Well, I'm sure the fans would agree. Cautiously optimistic heading forward, right?
That's right. And I'm not all that cautious because I've seen too much evidence of the evolution of our players, the development of our players. Nugent Hopkins, for sure. We've missed Taylor the last little while.
Yep.
I never like to see him out of the lineup for too long. And Jordan Eberle is playing very well. Justin Schultz was good. So a lot of the key pieces that we're going to need to perform at a high level moving forward are doing that.
Craig, as always, thanks for your time. Appreciate you doing this.
Okay, Tom, thank you.
Craig MacTavish and the Oilers, 17 straight deadline days where they've made a deal now.
All right, here we go. What do you got for me?
Overall,
Yeah.
better or worse?
Today? Well, I don't think it's about evaluating our team on Tuesday. It's about evaluating our team down the road. And I think we're considerably better. The exciting times for the organization to have as many draft choices as we do going into the next draft. I know that doesn't resonate completely with everybody, but we have enough picks. We've got 2 firsts, 2 seconds, 2 thirds, and what my guys tell me is an extremely deep draft. So we'll have the ability to draft well, to draft players that excite us, and we have enough draft picks that we can, potentially fill some of our obvious holes going forward. So I mean, it's never a great day on trade deadline day when you're a seller, which we were. We weren't selling to the point we were last year, but we were selling. And as well as Jeff played all year, it was we can't lose sight of the big picture here. We can't lose sight of the fact that we're the 29th team in the league, and we have to handle our assets appropriately. I think with Jeff getting to the genesis of the deal with him, we talked to a lot of teams over the last number of weeks. I was optimistic one day and a little bit more pessimistic the next day, and then it looked like the price was climbing when Sakaris went to LA. So I was optimistic, but at the end of the day, I felt that Jeff was of interest to a lot of teams, but he wasn't necessarily most teams' primary interest. And over the course of the many conversations that I had with teams over the last couple of weeks, I wasn't sure exactly what we were going to get from this.
Is the plan going forward more weighted toward trading a lot of those? Obviously not the first one, but those 6 picks.
Yeah. Well, there are quite obvious holes that we have that we'll be looking to try and move pieces, whether it's that first pick in the second round that are in a very strong draft. The value level of draft choices continues to go up as you get to the draft. So we know that we have to use some of those picks to try and improve our team in the long term and in the short term, and we'll be trying to do that. At least this year we have enough picks that it's a good strategy. Last year, going into the draft, we had the first, and then I traded the second, I traded the third. So we were sitting there. We're sitting at the draft table in the same position, but we're in a whole lot better situation in my mind.
Craig, last year down the stretch, your team actually won way more games than they had in the first part, but you're getting outshot a lot. What do you need to see from your team that'll make you believe that you've got some things that will actually improve the next season?
Well, I think I'm seeing that. I mean, I feel comfortable that the team is visually much better and competitively much better. We're in games against good teams that we weren't last year at all. We weren't close last year. And I know I've said that before. There's not a real material change from the situation we were in last year to where we are this year. But visually, the way guys are playing, the development of our core guys, Hopkins has certainly made a huge step this year. Eberle's playing on top of his game, competing hard. Taylor, we've missed. We don't like seeing him out of the lineup for the period of time he's been out. Justin Schultz recently has fit in nicely with Oscar Klefbom. It gives me great optimism going forward with that pair. And Keaton was playing better before he got hurt. Fane we've liked. So we have pieces. The fourth line has come together. Yak's playing much better. It's so it's turning for sure. It's turning. I think there's plenty of evidence outside of all of us that have been around this for the number of years that we've been around. There's plenty of evidence that this thing is turning, and sometimes it's difficult to recognize when you're as close to it as we are on a day-to-day basis. But I think some of the evidence is irrefutable over the last little while.
you'd rather have had somebody else's ready to be in the NHL defenseman rather than a second-round draft choice for Jeff?
Well, I said all along, my emphasis on this deal was a prospect, and there wasn't that level of interest back. I think if I was making the deal with the media, I might have got more, but unfortunately, I wasn't. And the market really is what the market is, and there's nobody that's lazy enough not to make the calls and try and gauge what that market is. And then going into the last day, I mean, there's a considerable risk. There's a downside risk as well as an upside risk. And we were chasing a deal that made a little bit more sense to me into the later hours last night, and it didn't materialize. So I was circling back to Montreal, who really throughout this was the team that showed the greatest level of interest, and then that was going a little sideways, and then later on in the evening we were able to come to an agreement. But I really wasn't comfortable going into today with the chance that we've got the last guy standing and there are no chairs at the table anymore. So there was some downside risk to prolong this.
Craig, was there much discussion about, I mean, they call them hockey deals, but did you dig into that much? Was there an opportunity to do that today? And was that something you even wanted to do today?
I couldn't, in my mind, concoct a hockey deal that made sense for our team in this situation. And what we need to do is we need to continue to build the core. And right now, we're clearly not good enough, and we're not strong enough, and we're not deep enough, although we're closing in on that. But as we see this team going into the future, I see the potential of another great Oiler decade. We've got developing resources on our team now. We've got Darnell Nurse, who's going to be a big part of our future. He's going to be exactly what we need. We've got Leon Draisaitl that's going to be a big part of that future. We've got internal development with our players. We've got a lot of draft choices coming up. So there's a lot of reason for optimism here. And to make a hockey deal that would involve, we have guys that are role players that aren't going to get us too much in return, and then we've got stars and developing stars, and trading one of those guys, in my mind, is not the right course of action for this group. We've got to support this group, and they're deserving of our support. They've been here, and none of these guys are coming to me and saying, "I've had enough. I want out of here." And I hold that as valuable, and we want to build a team with these guys, and I want to win with all those guys, and that's what we're trying to do.
How tough is it in a very impatient city that's watched the rebuild go on for a long time? How tough is it to keep your powder dry and to stick with this plan? How much outside?
I just don't see another reason. I just don't see another option. Like I really don't, and I think it's a level of frustration for everybody here that's waited as long as we have. But we can't lose sight of where we are, and we're on the cusp of, in my mind, we're on the cusp, whether it's next year, whether it's a year after that, good times are coming. I mean, that much I know for sure. Good times are coming. The worst of this is in the rearview mirror as we stand here today. And so I just, to trade one of our very valuable assets that we paid dearly to get, to try and fill another hole is just not a strategy that makes a lot of sense to me, because you're opening up a hole and filling another hole, and we're not at that point right now. We're not deep enough. When we get to the point where we're buying, which I don't think is too far away, and solidifying our group for a run into the playoffs and a Stanley Cup run, at that point we'll be faced, and it'll be a better strategy to try and go out and make hockey deals to get the exact piece where we leverage pieces of the future. But we're not at the point now that we're quite far enough along this rebuild to be mortgaging future assets to try and prop up this group we've got to continue to develop for a short period of time more.
Is there anybody that said to you for using like Andrew's name or personal and said, look, if you guys want to pick up some of the salary, we'd be interested in trading an older player, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
More established.
Not really. No, I didn't have those conversations, and for this reason, I think we need players for next year. We've got to go forward. I think we will go forward next year. We have to. And, we're going to need players. Teddy Purcell, to me, would be a guy, we had some interest in Teddy because, he'd be a guy that would fit in very well to a team that's having a playoff run. And a piece like Teddy would help because he can play with good players. He's got lots of talent. But, we need players for next year. We need experience. And we need Teddy next year, unless it was a deal that really made sense for us in the long term. We wouldn't do that. And Andrew's our captain. He's given us great leadership. He's a pillar in the community. He's a great representative of the organization here, and I hold that in high esteem.
On this notion of wanting to return a lot of players next year, about having guys, not as much turnover as previous years, how do you reconcile that with also knowing the team has to get better? There has to be some sort of change, because returning too much of this team, it's a team that hasn't had success. So where's...
Well, it's the, I see 3 or 4 pieces, significant pieces going forward. But I think that, with the development internally and, with a few significant changes, obvious changes that are necessary, I think this group can really move forward. And I'm seeing a group that's worthy of our support. Like, they're a highly competitive group. I don't think I've seen this team, certainly as my tenure here as manager, I have not seen the team compete and play for each other at the level that I'm seeing right now. And I think Todd gets a lot of credit for that, but a lot of the credit for that goes to the players. And the fight back and the pushback is I'm up there and I'm watching a real good team, and a team that's competing hard. And we're all lamenting the fact that we're not far enough along. Certainly myself as well. My life's a whole lot easier when we're winning. But these changes and these improvements and even the culture in the dressing room is something that we all have to recognize going forward. And it gives us, certainly in management, and I think the coaches too, it gives us lots of optimism for this group going forward. There's a lot of fight in this group.
You say you need like 3 or 4 pieces. People would argue it's a starting goalie and a number 1 and a number 2 defenseman. How do you get those if you're not going to be giving up some of your younger players?
Well, difficult, but we've got to do a good job in some of those areas. I'm reasonably comfortable going forward with Oscar and Justin and Nikita and Andrew and Mark Fain. That gives us, and I think Nikita was playing better. I mean, he started off slowly. I don't think he was in the best shape that he could have been. We got to get that rectified next year, but he was getting into shape, and he's a top 4 NHL defenseman. So I think that, we'll see what Jordan Osterley has coming forward. We'll see what Brandon Davidson has coming forward. They're both young players that have there's optimism there that they can develop. We've got Darnell Nurse coming forward. Who knows what we get in the draft, we could help ourselves not only at center, but on defense, depending on how this team finishes and where the bingo balls fall. But, I don't see that it's not going to, we've seen, for me anyways, not to go on and on and on, but we've seen just the benefit of Oscar coming in and playing those minutes. He just gives you 20 minutes of flawless hockey, and he's had a great effect on Justin. So that's, we bring in one more player of that that has that effect on our group, and a couple other key pieces, and all of a sudden we're not only competing with Boston and St. Louis and the better teams in the league, but we're winning those games.
Going back to when you came on with Jeff Petrie, and when you look, were you guys ever close to even a multi-year deal with him? When you look back at, he's 25 when you came in as a GM, and a guy who just started to develop 150-some games. How come you were never able to get even a short-term deal when you look back on the whole process?
Well, it's a good question, and at the end of last year, I felt strongly that we had to challenge Jeff on a one-year deal. I didn't like where his game was going. I didn't like the urgency in his game and the decisiveness in his game, and I thought it was important that we challenge him on a one-year deal. And his game, clearly after a couple months this year, hit another level. He was decisive, he was physical, he was playing at a different level. At that, and kudos to him. We approached his representatives to relay our interest in getting into discussions. I thought it'd be difficult to do a contract, but approached Wade and told them of our interest to do so. But at that point, Jeff wanted to play in the playoffs, and I give him a lot of credit for that. And we'll see what happens going forward when the playoff run is over. But nothing we've done here with Jeff is. I'm not sure I can go any further on that, but
How aggressive were the pitches for Everly?
Zero. Zero. I had no interest in trading Jordan Everly, none. And you just don't find people like that can play like that. I mean, he's a big part of our future.
You always talk about your draft picks. Is your second pick in the first round definitely in play for either defenseman or goaltender?
I would say everything is in play. I mean, not the lottery pick, obviously, but we would entertain all thoughts to try and help us there.
You've seen two significant sides of Nail Yakupov really in one season, the way he's playing now, and maybe the way it was a little bit earlier. He needs a contract as well. Was there any interest in him out there? And what do you see in the next couple of years with the Oilers and Yakupov, this relationship?
I see it to continue to evolve the way that it has. We all see the promise now that we had when we drafted him. And I had zero interest in trading Nail Yakupov. I think we've gone this far. We all got to see the end now. I mean, it's been some ups and downs and some sideways play and some head-scratching stuff, and he's on top of his game now. And he shows all the assets that we saw when we drafted him. The speed, the physical power, the shot. He's making good plays with the puck. And who knows what unlatches all that for him. But he's really figured it out. He's playing with confidence, and he's a hard-working guy, and we got to see how it finishes. And I have no question that Yak is going to continue to develop, and he's got a reference point of what he needs to do now because he's hit a different level. So I'm as curious as anybody to see where that level goes, because I think it's sky high.
Craig, when it comes to evaluating your head coach, Todd, he's got a roster that a lot of AHL guys on it and a lot of injuries. What factors do you use to evaluate his performance this year, apart from wins and losses, with the roster that he has?
Well, I think just level of competitiveness, and I've said enough about how I feel that we're competing. I think the coach has to be on the dial. One thing for me that's important is when the team has a poor game or a poor showing or a poor effort, that he's able to grab them quickly and get their performance level to a much higher level, so there's some response there. And that's optimistic. I think we're not going to make any decisions on the coaches or the coaching or the head coach till the season's over. And I've been clear about that from the outset. But we're all seeing the types of things that we're going to need to see on a continuing basis to get into a longer-term agreement with Todd.
So how many guys do you want to look at from the Barons in the stretch, just to see what you've got?
Well, we're a little bit limited on what we can do there with the 4 recall rule. We've sent 3 guys down today, and we're going to bring them back up, and we're only allowed 4. So we have only 1 left, 1 other player that we can draw up there, up from Oklahoma City, unless it's on an emergency basis. So the guys I'd like to give a chance to, I hope that we can. I mean, we don't want injuries, but we hope we get an opportunity to see Brandon Davidson again. He played very well the last time he was up here in San Jose, so he's got lots of promise. I'd like to see Andrew Miller come up here and see what he can do. He's been a good player down there. Curtis Hamilton, I'd like to give an opportunity to. Bogdan Yakimov, all those guys. The goalie, Laurent Brossoit, has played very well. We'd like to see him come up, and hopefully can give him a game pretty soon. So, you know, it's as disappointing it is to be selling at this time of year. I'm looking forward to the end of the year, where I couldn't say that last year.
Just sort of further to with all your picks, and I know you want to move some of them, but if you can, how much input are you going to have with your scouting staff going forward? Because this is obviously crucial.
Yeah. Well, I'm confident that we've made enough changes to our scouting and our processes and our personnel that I'm very happy with how that's all progressing. With Bob Green, Stu McGregor, Scott Housen is taking full on amateur scouting. Scott's got a terrific eye of talent, as does Bob and Stu. And we've got a few different things that we're doing in terms of our area scouts that I think is really going to pay dividends going forward. But, you know, in some of the discussions I had as recently as today, we're bringing out our draft list and seeing potentially what players would be available for what picks if we were thinking of moving these picks.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Well, it's a special edition of the panel brought to you by Sport Check. Tom, Jack, Bob, and Chris on trade deadline day in the NHL. Guys, the Oilers have made 52 trades now since 1980 on deadline day, one of the most busy and active teams in the league. Just a tidbit to throw out there as we discuss what we saw today. The Oilers trading Jeff Petrie to the Montreal Canadiens for a second-round pick and a conditional fifth in this year's draft. Let's break down the deal today.
Well, I think the conditional fifth is something that needs to be discussed a little bit further in detail because it's not your average conditional fifth. I mean, Montreal very likely could wind up as a top seed in the Eastern Conference and maybe a favorite to at least get to the conference final, which if it does, it becomes a third-round pick, and that is a big difference. So when you look at maybe a second and a third-round pick, it sounds a little bit better than the initial estimated return for Jeff Petrie, and a lot of that was predicated on the Andre Sekera deal, but Bob, as Craig MacTavish talked about, the market will bear what it's going to bear. And as you got deeper into trade discussions, it became evident that maybe the Oilers were going to have a harder time getting a prospect and a player they could plug in right away than maybe initially thought, especially with that Sekera deal. I think that started the Boulder run a bit.
Yeah, and then you factor in, Jack, what kind of occurred with Tampa Bay late last night, right, with Braden Coburn. But Braden Coburn had term left on his deal. He can play both sides, both left and right. Petrie, for the most part, he's a right shot. He's played right defense. In terms of the difference between Sekera and Petrie, Sekera's had a 44-point season in the NHL. Jeff Petrie has become a pretty good defenseman on what has been a bad team. And unfortunately, when you're on a team that has struggled as much as the Oilers have, sometimes that devalues the players. I was interested watching Craig MacTavish's availability today, the fact that he seemed really committed to the Oilers' young core again. And I was kind of wondering what was going on in the fall a bit. And it's almost like there's sort of been a reaffirmation with under Todd Nelson that, hey, we got some good young players. Let's just grow organically and recognize where we're at right now. In Jeff Petrie's case, he gets an opportunity to see what he can do with Montreal. If he can parlay that into a better contract, and the Oilers now are going to be well-armed coming up for the 2015 NHL draft.
How busy, Chris, is this draft going to be now that Bob mentions it? 10 picks, 6 in the first 90, potentially barring trades. How crazy is that weekend going to be in Florida?
Well, we also looked at the Jeff Petrie trade, and like Jack mentioned, they could turn into a third-round pick if they reach the conditions, and that could give them 7 in the first 3 rounds. So that gives them some wiggle room to not only draft some good players and what he called a very deep draft is what he's being told by his scouts, but it also could give them an opportunity to maybe move and get some players, some live bodies to come up and fit in right away.
And where will the focus be potentially at the draft in terms of positioning?
Well, I think at this point, the Oilers are probably getting to the point where it's going to be best player available again. They've addressed some depth issues in their organization. I do think a goaltender will certainly be on the radar. Right. I think they'd like to get another prospect in the system to go alongside Laurent Brossoit. And it was interesting to hear Craig MacTavish say, in a perfect world, Bob, he expanded a little bit the field of potential players from the Barons that we could see, and he included Brossoit as maybe a guy who could get a game. So I would think that in that first 3 rounds, they'd look at a goaltender to, again, kind of replenish. That's the one area. But I think the rest of the system has some decent size in it, and they've added some prospects on defense. They've got a few forwards in the mix as well that they're going to like looking at, and that gives you the flexibility of, if you do make all those picks, you can take the best player available.
He also mentioned that a center or a defense, depending on where the bingo balls fall, are going to be at the top.
Well, that's more of a lottery thing.
Right. Yeah, he's, MacTavish mentioned in the past, guys, that the Oilers need scoring. And so, and that's, which, it's funny, I wouldn't have thought that a guy like Mitch Marner would have fit. I mean, if the Oilers end up drafting 4th, 5th, or 6th, now you're in sort of the Dylan Strome, Mitch Marner, maybe Noah Hannafin, Lasse Krause range. And I wouldn't have thought Mitch Marner before because the Oilers have a little bit smaller up front, but it's hard to ignore those numbers that kid's put up with London this year. I'm with Jack totally. I think the organization has to reevaluate goaltending as a whole from top to bottom. And I do think that either by moving picks, put it this way, I'd do both. I'd probably consider finding a way to utilize a pick or 2 to get a goaltender that is ready to play right away and push Ben Scrivens. And then I'd also use another 2nd or 3rd round pick on a goaltender as well, because I think the organization has to totally reupholster their entire outlook on how they're dealing with the goaltender.
Tough thing is you might be better off trying to get a prospect goaltender because the free agent market for goaltenders upcoming this summer is going to be a little bit thin.
Which is why I'm saying
right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look at the trade deadline today. We didn't see a goaltender move until the last hour.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Minimal impact.
Trading for a goalie who could actually compete for a number 1 job might be a bit of a challenge, but But if there's a prospect that you could maybe package some picks to pick up, maybe a guy who's 20, 21 years old, a little bit further along than drafting a guy who's 18, maybe that becomes an option. But that's
Fair
more
enough.
summertime talk.
Going back to today instead of summertime, any surprises in the fact that maybe there wasn't much more speculation? I mean, some things came from out east that maybe some big name ticket players could be on the move, but one move, is that kind of what we were expecting, or did you expect maybe a couple more
How many
moves today?
blockbuster hockey trades were made today?
You might have to argue that there was maybe one, not even.
Right. So,
Yeah.
look, I from an Edmonton perspective, I think, unfortunately, the start of the season kind of put this situation into effect here today with Jeff Petrie. And it is interesting that Derek Roy was not, that the Oilers have elected to go down a different path. And they communicated that to Roy, and Roy communicated that back to them as well. So we'll look to watch that carrying forward, how that connection continues with Neil Yakupov. But now it's about evaluating their players carrying forward and also evaluating their coach and seeing if the growth and the impressive way the team's playing in the eyes of the general manager continues.
And we also saw some emphatic comments about the core and the expansion of that core. It's pretty evident to me that Boyd Gordon and Matt Hendricks are part of the expansion of that core. I mean, we heard zero discussions as far as players that could have been very viable contributors for a club maybe looking to strengthen its run. I mean, I think there's a handful of teams, but he made it clear that those two guys are going to be part of the Oilers organization going forward. Very strong statement in particular with respect to Jordan Eberle today. So, as Bob said earlier, the reaffirmation of what Edmonton already has was one of the stronger statements I thought I detected from General Manager Craig MacTavish today.
Finally, just a couple things, because we always talk about who we could see up here, but now it's coming to the point where guys were talked about during Craig MacTavish's press conference that might get a shot with the big club. The Oilers making a paper transaction in terms of the AHL clear day. Who realistically has a shot at making their NHL debut or getting another look here in the next couple
Brandon
of weeks?
Davidson is a guy that this organization really likes. They want to take a look at him moving forward for the rest of the season, going into next year to see what they want to do with him. We also might get to see, as Bob's already mentioned before on a panel, we might see Andrew Miller, we might see Curtis Hamilton, but also Craig MacTavish, Laurent Brossoit, Bogdan Yakimov. No question we're going to see a bunch of transactions after they can clear up some paper things to make sure that they have players that can contribute in the playoffs down in the American Hockey League. Once that's clear, we'll start seeing some
I don't know about you, but Brossoit was the one that really stuck out in terms of the names he mentioned to me today.
That was
interesting.
Pretty interesting. I mean, I'd like to see how much Yakupov's progressed since we
Yakimov.
saw him. Yes,
Yakimov.
We know Yakupov.
Right. He's progressed as well.
Yes, but how much Bogdan has progressed since the start of the season?
He's put up some numbers of late. Okay, so the Oilers are back in action Tuesday night against the defending Cup champions. Jack and Bob, as always, have the call for you on 6:30. Chad Westcott and I have got you covered here on EdmontonOilers.com.
Thanks, guys.
Oh,